game time. And with that, we are thrilled to welcome in Aditi Kinkhabwala to the show. What's up, Aditi?
Hey, guys. I was with our old friend, Joe Flacco.
I know that, Aditi. I saw your post-game interview when the Colts thankfully beat the Steelers, held on because the Colts almost choked that game away. But after the game, I know you were talking with Flacco, and you said to him that Anthony Richardson told you that he thought Joe was cool, but Joe was not buying that. Correct?
I mean, it really happened. Legit, It really happened. And I mean, thank goodness I asked Anthony Richardson about Joe Flacco, what it's like having him in the room. And the first thing he said was that he's actually cooler than I thought he was. You know, like he's always just kind of seen him from afar, but when he's in the room, it's a different thing. And it was just such a great line. And this is one of those things that, you know, I've known Joe 15 years, like at least 15 years going back to, and I would see him twice a year with the Ravens. And so you build a relationship, you build a rapport, you know, like what kind of mood somebody's in. And it just was one of those, like, I don't know, it just felt right to repeat it back to him right there. And, you know, I had a feeling Joe would play along, but he played along even better by dropping that nugget on us, which, as you're referencing, he said Anthony Richardson told him that his mother is exactly 8 days older than Joe. So therefore, there is no way that Anthony could think he's cool.
Is that actually true, or were they be exaggerating?
No. It's true. I guess apparently at some point they were talking about Joe being born in 1985 and his birthday in January. And Anthony said, what day in January? And it really happened. But I'll tell you, that whole interview was a roller coaster of emotions because first, Joe Flacco makes me feel like every cliche about aging is true, that we get better like fine wines and no one can tell us we're too old to do anything and there's still life in us and we're feeling great. And then it's crashing down to earth because P.S., I'm even older than Joe Flacco. So I'm older than Anthony Richardson.
Well, I'll tell you what, you look a lot younger than Joe Flacco.
That's true.
How about that? Hey,
as I'm a sweaty mess from my run, but okay, thanks, Dustin. Flattery will get you everywhere.
I know, that's why I flatter. Hey, so Flacco and Baker both play well. The Browns lose. It makes it this easy narrative here in Cleveland that the Browns kind of messed up with letting those guys go. Look, Joe Flacco was not going to be the long-term answer in Cleveland. We know that. But it does make things a little bit tougher to swallow on a Monday and Tuesday after a loss to a team that's not very good, Aditi. What do we make of that? I mean, I know it's like kind of just nothing because they're not here anymore, but it stinks, especially seeing Baker play well for us.
So, look, Joe Flacco was asked again about Cleveland offering him a deal, and he said, no, they never even came to me. But we knew that was going to happen, right? Because the minute that Deshaun wasn't playing well, people would be screaming for Joe Flacco. He had become this, cult hero last year. So that wasn't smart if all your eggs are in the Deshaun Watson basket. And I was told that they felt there was higher upside with Jameis Winston than there was with Joe Flacco. And if there is a future... Sure, but whatever. So that's that piece. What's the point in looking back on the Baker Mayfield deal? I mean, the Panthers, and we made this point when we had Andy Dalton leading the Panthers last week. Hey, Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, who going into last week's game were leading the most explosive offenses in the NFL. Well, the Panthers had both of them before they moved on from them, got Bryce Young, who they've now, at least temporarily or maybe permanently, whatever, moved on from. So it's always about puzzle pieces, fits, whatever. The Baker thing, I've said it before. I'll say it again. I know Adam doesn't want to hear it, but I really think that they could have stuck with him, could have won with him. I truly believe that he loved Cleveland and espoused the attitude of Cleveland and would have been great with the Browns. But whatever. Coulda. That's old news. What can you do now? So now the question is, do you believe in a sunk cost? And there was a sunk cost with Deshaun Watson, and that's that. Or do you still unequivocally believe in him and believe in what he can do for your team and believe in the way that he can lead your team and believe in all of what you did initially, which when you gave him that huge contract, and move forward with him? Like, that's the only discussion. There's no bringing Baker Mayfield back. There's no bringing Joe Flacco back. So now it's, okay, how do you, if you're all in on Deshaun Watson, How do you help him? Or do you decide to chalk up the last few years as a sunk cost and move on? And it sure feels like the Browns are still all in on him. So, okay, so how do you further help him?
Sorry, Dee, just to make one point, then I'll let the guys ask the questions. I'm not trying to steal all the time. The point I'm making when saying that about Baker and about Joe Flacco is that if Deshaun Watson won that game Sunday and threw for 350 and looked like a $250 million quarterback, no one would give a rip about what Baker and Flacco does. You know what I mean? Like, we don't care about other people and other cities and other teams if we're good. You know, like, we got to get our house right. If our house is right, then we wouldn't even give a darn about what happens everywhere else. That's it. That's my point. Go ahead, guys.
No, that's totally true. But I just want to say one other thing, and I think this is sort of like the fan perspective and sometimes maybe like ownership perspective versus how a coach thinks. And, you know, Mike Tomlin is the perfect example of this. Mike Tomlin doesn't give two whits about style points. He doesn't care about any numbers. He doesn't care about the 300 yards. He just wants a W. It's about the letter, not the numbers. And I think that fans worry, like, how good did Deshaun look? Well, Deshaun almost did. You know, like, that O-line is not playing particularly well. The defense didn't hold up the way that you want the defense to hold up. You know, there are a lot of other things, but Deshaun still did what he could, what was asked for. If he could have gotten the W, I think you have a different attitude even without the 300 yards and the 3 passing touchdowns. You know, it should, like, you need to start racking up some wins. And it's kind of, again, it's the conversation. It's why the Steelers are so happy with Justin Fields, even though the fans are like, hey, he's engineering wins. He's doing exactly what his coaches are asking of him. He's not getting greedy. He's not stepping out of that. You know, it's why there's some, I hate to call them questions about Joe Burrow, but, like, look at that number. 1 win? Come on now. You know, you expect more.
Adam, thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's not his fault. He's played great in 3 out of 4 games. So they're not 1 and 3.
Sure, but again, like, when you have a quarterback like that, when you have a Joe Burrow, a Lamar Jackson, a Patrick Mahomes, those guys are Superman. Like, you expect them to put a team on their shoulders and win.
Yeah.
And we all know that in football, you can't do that all by yourself. This is not Michael Jordan in basketball. But there's still sort of this expectation that you make everyone else better around you, that you mitigate for whatever issues are plaguing your team in some way. And when Deshaun Watson got that contract, the expectation was that he was going to be in that category, right?
Right. And he played well this week, but he's been unable to do it. I think the shift in the NFL that we're seeing with the running game getting bigger, having to throw shorter, is affecting that in general in the league, and we haven't adjusted our expectations to it, whether it's Deshaun or anybody else.
That's fair. But this is why the Browns, as they were constructed a year ago, this is why the Browns, as the offense that they were running from the time Kevin Stefanski has been here, was so tremendous and so suited what the game has become. And it'll be interesting to see when Nick Chubb is back and healthy, and do they kind of go back to starting from that point? You know, if your offense runs through your best player, and if your best player is Nick Chubb, what does that mean? Or is it, you know, again, let's see. Yeah. Let's see. There's still a lot of football to be played. Look, people were writing off the Ravens, and how good did the Ravens look against the Bills?
Yeah. Aditi, let me ask you about the defensive side of the ball, because, you know, you talked about, you know, Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin and how that defense is always being stout. And we thought that the Browns were there, you know, from last year. They certainly looked that part. This year, especially in this last game particularly, I know they didn't give up a lot of points. I know it was only 20 points, but it was just points of that game where they just looked not enthusiastic, I should say. What did you think?
It's so funny. So this past weekend, we were talking to Gus Bradley, who was quoting Rod Marinelli, who you, of course, know is one of the all-time best defensive line coaches the game has seen. Yeah, and he was talking about how much of defense is about mentality. Like stopping the run, for example. That's not as much, that of course is physical, but it's almost more mental. It's an attitude. It's a feeling you have. And last year, you very much felt the attitude, feeling, the speed with which the Browns played, that not on our blade of grass, like you're not crossing this line. That all of that felt almost tangible. And that's the piece that's missing right now. How much of that is Miles not being fully Miles? We saw this 2 weeks ago when we were in Vegas and we had the Panthers versus Vegas, and Max Crosby was hobbled somewhat. He was limited. And that defense was just different without Max Crosby at 100%. How much, you guys can tell me this better, how much does this defense bleed off of the tone or the attitude that Myles Garrett sets? And if Miles's feet are not quite right, is that having an impact?
Yeah, well, the rest of the defensive line stinks. So
they're not as good as Myles Garrett, but that could be part of it, especially when your best players not have that level of energy. He still has the production, but I see the line of thought that you got with that. I'm trying to figure this out, Aditi, and I can't. The Browns in the first drive are just dominant. They're like they're the 80s 49ers. they're the Hogs under with the Washington Redskins back in the day. They might even be Jim Kelly in the K-gun offense. Like, they can't be stopped. They can't be stopped. And then the very next series, it's like, oh no, we don't know how to run any of those. They just fall off. I cannot explain how you look so great the first series, and then second and third quarter, it's just like you're begging for like.
Has anybody asked Kevin Stefanski what's the difference when the plays are scripted? Because an offense comes out with a script.
He gives no straight answers, so what's the point? He never gives a straight answer to anything.
Well, then has anybody asked Deshaun? How do you feel different when you have a script versus when things are being sent in on the fly?
Yes, it's a question that should be getting asked.
And if this is my question, I script the whole game then. You know what? This is the only plays we running. We ain't going off this sheet. The Denny's menu is what it is. We scripting 1 through 4 quarters. Okay. And
ask Dustin, if that's what he was facing, what would you do? If you had an offense that you knew was so scripted and couldn't adjust or adapt or whatever, wasn't reading how you as a defense were playing, what would you as a defense do?
Well, I mean, it would be very easy to be jumping all over them. I mean, look, you can't script an entire game. You can script 10 plays, because here's the thing. The reason why those 10 plays are so effective is because you have practiced them so many more times than everything else. You can't put the time and effort you put into those 10 plays into 70 plays. It's not realistic, man.
Can you?
And also the game, once you get into a flow of a game, you get off script by the way things sort of play out. You can't just think in your mind, well, I'm going to do this all of a sudden. Wow, things just changed on a dime. A turnover happened. Now we got a short field or a sudden change situation. Now maybe you want to take a shot instead of running on that first down. All kinds of things.
Is that a skill set?
What do you mean?
Calling plays off script. Is that a skill set coaches have? Like where?
Oh yeah.
Hey, when it gets, I know how to dial it up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Guys, let's leave it here for now because we got to run. Aditi, thanks for joining us as always. We will talk.
Thanks
to you
for having me.
You got
it. All right, sounds
she was just about to co-sign everything I said.
Look,
she was ready to go.
We'll talk next week, G. Don't be eating the ham in the grocery store, okay? Don't be eating the ham before you pay for it.
Listen, I need a piece of that. let me taste that. Go ahead.
Just as we say goodbye, I watched every hit you had on during the game. Thought you were fantastic. You're my favorite.
Dustin, thank you.
You're welcome.
Like I said, flattery will get you everywhere.
Thank you.